we can actually see the control improving over time. We can see effectively the control dropping in quality from quarter to quarter, and then we can go to the business and say, hey, like, why has this happened? What did you change? And that enables us to have really good quality conversations. Actually, you can kind of transform your audit function from being a pure assurance mechanism to being almost like experimental, where you say, well, I got a theory that this doesn't work, let me go and test out that theory and prove or disprove it. And that's a real insight for the business.
What were some early values that maybe more concretely that you've seen, you're like, yes, there is something here and let's keep exploring it?
We calculated how much that agent would save us over the course of a year, and it's like 700 hours, right? Based on the number of audits we were doing.
What's the sort of value you're seeing today?
At the end of 24, and be able to say to my CEO, right, our cost per audit's gone down by 40%. Our number of audits per auditor had almost doubled. We doubled the number of controls we covered from kind of around the 50 mark to kind of 98, 99.
Any quick words of advice on people thinking about this?
Do you know what? Like, I think in most organizations, someone somewhere will be thinking about how AI and automation with AI can kind of improve processes and efficiency in the organization. So tap into those people. The reason we started kind of experimenting, which was to understand the technology so that we can audit it.
Welcome to Control and Shift, the podcast where we explore how technology is transforming the world of controls, from audit to risks and compliance and beyond. I'm Henry, and today we are diving into a hot topic, how AI is reshaping internal audit. Our guest is Matt, head of internal audit at OakNorth. He's been on the front line bringing AI into the world of internal audit, and he's here to share his experience with us today. So Matt, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Little bit about myself. I'm head of audit for OakNorth. I've kind of worked for a number of kind of banks. I have about almost 30 years experience in internal audit and risk management. And yeah, I would say kind of AI is probably the most exciting thing I've seen come to the world of assurance, and gives us a kind of real opportunity to drive some of the kind of changes that have been bubbling under internal audit, certainly through my career. So yeah, really excited to talk about it and share our journey. So
that's great. And for perhaps the people that are dialing into this with not a lot of experience in the world of assurance within an organization, maybe you can tell us a little bit more the role that internal audit plays.
Sure. So I kind of work effectively for the board. I report to the audit committee, and effectively I describe my job as keeping the organization safe, right? And the way we do that is through kind of auditing it, and we audit it to provide assurance that the controls, governance and risk management frameworks are effective to help kind of good things happen and to stop bad things happening. And that's effectively kind of what we try to do. You know, the way we do that kind of varies with lots of different things. We are increasingly, like most audit functions, doing more advisory work, where we may be taking a kind of process area and saying, like, you know, how does this benchmark against kind of standards, you know? For example, on AI, looking at how AI governance maps against the kind of NIST standards that have just come out, or the ISOs, and kind of giving the business some guidance around how to shape their governance strategies.
That's amazing. I think that description has already shed a lot of light on the crucial role that it plays. I think traditionally, a lot of people think about audit and they immediately think these very quite rigid, methodical and very structured functions, which it is at its core characteristic. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of changes, both externally and internally, that's driving tech adoption. So I'd love to, I think, starting by hearing your perspective of why technology in this market right now is the right time for people to discuss it.
Okay, so maybe I'll talk about like how I see AI pulling together a few kind of macro trends in assurance that I've kind of noticed over the last sort of few years. And these are kind of long-running trends that I've seen through my career, right? Like I started working in kind of, 1997, and we were talking about CATs, computer-assisted audit techniques, and continuous control testing, and embedding control testing in systems. Like, I kind of watched for the first 20 years of my career as none of that really happened. So I would say the macro trends I'm talking about are things like the importance of data analytics, the importance of continuous control monitoring, and the importance of kind of being able to test significant parts of the population in the background and give, real-time assurance, so shortening the assurance cycles. So those are the things that I think AI enables us to do much more quickly and more effectively. And effectively, I work for a relatively kind of small, medium-sized bank, and I don't have a massive team. And actually, I've preferred over my career, I've worked in big tier one banks and big teams, but I prefer to work in small teams and in smaller organizations because I feel like internal audit can offer a lot more value in those environments. And therefore, working in a small team, I don't always have the resources to build a data analytics team because that takes away kind of significant resources, to be honest, and investment. And therefore, having something like AI, which enables us to do kind of natural language coding, to build analytics is kind of really powerful. So
that's great. I think the three key challenges you've shared, I think it's been really around the space of internal audit for the last maybe 5 to even probably 10 years where people are talking about it. And with these momentums, I suppose, for organizations, it also creates certain challenges in today's world, how an internal audit team functions in light of these big momentum desires or things that the teams and companies want to implement. So what do you see are some quite common challenges in current internal audit team functions in light of those big market?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, around analytics, right? I've worked in the last few years at a number of different organizations, generally in small teams, and actually I've been constantly trying to build a data analytics capability. When I started at OakNorth, I had a data analytics team. And that team was structured in a very traditional way with a data scientist. We had kind of ACL, and we worked through use cases, long development cycles, kind of lots of manual interventions, lots of kind of API builds, lots of kind of, standard development, and then all the maintenance around those. We'd build an API, we'd run it once. Someone had changed something in a system, suddenly it didn't work, right? And it took us a year to build kind of around about, I would say, 10 to 15 reasonable use cases. But then actually we weren't really able to kind of regularly rerun those. And that was a kind of huge cost to the business. And eventually we said, let's go in a different direction. What I love about AI is it kind of, we talk about it democratizing the kind of analytics world. So it enables my team to actually kind of run analytics themselves. And that does two things. Not only does it allow us to run the analytics, but it also kind of teaches them, and we learn about how data works and how analytics work, which kind of encourages more use. So it's kind of a virtuous circle in that respect. And then kind of continuous control monitoring is maybe the other one I'll focus on. I think what AI does for us is kind of enable us, as part of our audit cycle, when we do a control test, now we look back at that test and say, can we kind of build that into something that we run quarterly, and can we kind of rerun it and report out on it? And effectively, we've kind of set ourselves a target of doing 10 of those a year, just kind of, as normal course of business. And we've got a couple that we've been running for 4 or 5 quarters now, which gives us trending data. We can actually see the control improving over time. We can see effectively the control dropping in quality from quarter to quarter, and then we can go to the business and say, hey, why has this happened? What did you change? And that enables us to have really good quality conversations as well.
Yeah, it plays in part into, I think, the role of internal audit functions shifting and adding more values, more like an advisor, now that you have these data ready for you to have the conversation with different stakeholders in the organization.
Exactly, it's really powerful to have that data. Before, I would say, we may have we may have theorized that something was happening, but actually you can kind of transform your audit function from being a kind of, pure assurance mechanism to being almost experimental, where you say, well, I got a theory that this doesn't work. Let me go and test out that theory and prove or disprove it. And that's a real insight for the business because, they don't often have the time and capacity to do that kind of introspection on their control framework.
Yeah. And it's also, I think it's interesting, the way I see it is it's really bridging of different line of defenses as well. There's first, there's second, there's third, but actually it doesn't have to be limited like that. There are a lot of values that you could create that helps the wider business, not just.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a real, so certainly once you can get the continuous control monitoring right, actually audit can be a kind of, a forcing function which creates those control tests and continuous control tests, kind of perfects them and runs them for 4 or 5 quarters, and then hands them back to the kind of first line as their kind of business assurance testing, as their kind of first line monitoring of their control framework. And in that way, kind of the whole control framework of the organization matures, because, management is now able to much better kind of monitor that and assure it. As a third line, like, I've got more confidence in what the first line are doing, because I've kind of effectively, been part of the development of that. And I know that creates for some people kind of, issues around objectivity, or independence. But I think, like, gone are the days when a third line function should sit independent from the business. And what I mean by that is kind of, we're not independent, we're internal. Like, we're objective, and we must always be objective. But actually, that doesn't mean that we're not part of the business, and we shouldn't try to help them improve controls in whatever way we can, really.
That's a great insight. I think now we spoke about some of the market momentums. We spoke about opportunities where you've seen values of AI.
Yep.
I think what was perhaps the change? What was the moment where you within the organization thought, okay, now we've got to really look at this? What was the driver?
Sure. Okay. So I think a number of things came together at once for us as a team. We're kind of going through a transformation, looking at our methodology. Like, I was, pushing the team to kind of to learn about continuous improvement cycles and lean, and we were focused on how can we make our processes more efficient. I had a kind of member of my team who was kind of really forward thinking in terms of AI and kind of AI risk. And we kind of as a team said, right, hey, like, how can we use kind of AI? And this is probably beginning late 2023. We were kind of working initially on, OpenAI, ChatGPT kind of free versions. And we were initially, I would say, using it as a kind of glorified Google, right? But actually we were starting to experiment and say, okay, if I wanted to write, so the first thing we did was we set ourselves as a task as a team to say, well, like, how can we make our reports more interesting and exciting, right?
You find a use case first.
Yeah, exactly.
To play around with.
So we went away and like played around on ChatGPT, and people created like how to structure an accounts payable audit as a film script, right? How to structure it as a novel, how to structure it as a Viking saga.
Make it fun.
Yeah, like and we had a session as a team on kind of that, right? And it was just kind of really eye-opening the depth that you could go to. And I think we took it as far as we could without being able to upload kind of data to OpenAI. But I think what we really realized was in doing that was, hey, like, this is a really powerful tool. Actually, as auditors, we need to understand how it works, because it's going to be embedded within multiple processes we're auditing. And that was the driver for us to start as a team utilizing it. I kind of am lucky enough to work for a very forward-thinking organization. And around that time, one of our founders was also pushing for kind of how do we leverage AI, and we were already starting to experiment. So, we got a couple of enterprise licenses, and effectively, I kind of had been part of an AI hackathon with the tech team and a few other functions, and they said, hey, we got some licenses, does anyone want one? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And once we had the enterprise capability, which enabled us to safely upload our, we were able to start really doing a lot more with the use cases and start to get into creating and training agents, basically.
It's super. I think 2023 is really, it's only been 2 years, but actually, if you come to think about it, most people probably started using ChatGPT for the first time in 2023 in their lives. Like, people will probably start, write me a note, write me an email, write me a reply. Like, people probably start these type of use cases. And by then you were already thinking about how this could be applied to your function. So I think the key takeaway there is, from my side, is make it fun, make it creative. And also, when it comes to a new technology, actually try it, be quite open with it. Obviously, be cautious about the security and the data, but explore it, because you never know, this could be the biggest disruption and biggest innovation we've seen.
Yeah, and I think we, through, like, I'm lucky enough to have a kind of team that is really has a really good growth mindset.
Yeah.
You know, we work in kind of agile cycles where, you know, we frequently at the end of each cycle and then at the end of each quarter ask ourselves, like, you know, what did we do that worked really well that we can repeat? You know, what failed that we can learn from, and how do we improve our processes? And actually having AI alongside that, you know, it is really powerful because it enables you to kind of start to say, well, hey, like, this is a kind of repetitive task. Is there a use case in here that we can kind of automate something, right? And like the key thing is just you need to kind of get in and start to experiment, and you need to give your teams the room to experiment. Like, I have kind of 4 people in my leadership team, and we were all very clear from the beginning, like, it's okay to fail. Like, it's okay to try something and it doesn't work, you know, fail small, fail fast, but like, just try stuff, and we'll kind of, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. We're like, we'll pick up the pieces and we'll find another way of doing things, but we'll have learned something. So yeah, I think really important I'd really encourage people just to get out there and you know, think about some crazy use cases and just try them.
Yeah. I have a quick follow-up around how do you first define a few POC, a few pilots? So how did you get started maybe more, to look at actually applying this to the businesses? How did you maybe structure that pilot when you first started? Yeah,
it's a good question. So first of all, I'd say one of the things I've learned is that you know, AI gives you incredible power to be a developer, but many of us don't have those kind of really good development kind of disciplines, and therefore, like, we made a lot of mistakes. Things like we built a really cool agent, but then the person who built it left, and like we couldn't access it anymore, right? Because it was tied to them, and they hadn't given anyone else access to it. Right. Okay. So that's kind of one of the things. Like, we also learned, like, we kind of built an agent and we trained it on all this data, and then kind of the data changed, but we didn't update the agent with the changed data, and therefore we were like, hey, why is the results not coming out right? So kind of, you know, one of the things, you know, we kind of did at the beginning in structuring our POCs was just really not structuring them well. I think the first kind of POCs we did were use cases where we said, okay, we want to kind of design a tool that looks at our reports and basically says, are they compliant with standards? Do they follow our methodology? And, you know, I've got an editorial style I like stuff to be in, so we uploaded that editorial style into the agent, and then you could feed our reports into that, and the agent would output kind of a load of stuff that was really useful, like to try to improve the way we said things. Like, it would say things like, actually, in the exec summary, you know, you haven't tied back to a strategic objective of the business. And you'd be like, okay, that's a good thing to do, because that's one of the things that's in our guidance for report writing, right? Or, you know, we'd also kind of upload our terms of reference, and it'd say, okay, in the report, I can't really see where you've covered this point that was on the terms of reference in the report. So just kind of utilizing simple use cases like that. And then we progressed to kind of POCs around the first kind of bigger POC we did was to try to automate our audit planning memo. And that's a document we kind of do at the beginning of the audit cycle to pull together all of our kind of knowledge about that area and process, plus any kind of risk data, you know, stuff, operational risk events, kind of risk taxonomy elements we want to cover, our regulatory elements. And we wanted to try to make all of those pieces where we were just looking at a spreadsheet and taking some risk events and cutting and pasting them into a document. We wanted to automate that piece. So we built that. We uploaded a load of data in there, like our taxonomy, our operational risk events, you know, our kind of methodology, you know, our kind of regulatory, the regulations that we might want to reference to, and we set and configured the agent to kind of output in a format that followed our and we trained that over time. It started off, it was about 20% right. I think now we've got it to about 70%. So it generates about 70% of the document, and that frees up the kind of team's time to actually analyze those outputs and say, well, what does that mean for how we should scope this audit? So for me, that kind of, you know, it lifts us as auditors up from the kind of repetitive tasks to doing the actual analysis and thinking, which is kind of what I really like.
So true. Yeah. So you just share, like, starting from playing around and not being quite right, But I guess very quickly, once you understood how it works, very quickly you're able to tune it into something that actually unlocks all the value. And what were some early values that maybe more concretely that you've seen, you're like, yes, there is something here, and let's keep exploring it, and let's scale it into something that we use every day rather than just pilots and POCs.
So clearly, like the time saving around that particular
efficiency,
the efficiency gain. What was really interesting was at the same time as a business, we were running a kind of use case competition.
Okay.
Right. How many hours can you save? Right. And I think everybody was kind of posting, right, I've built this agent, it saves X amount of time. Yeah. And we calculated how much that agent would save us over the course of a year, and it's like 700 hours, right? Insane. Based on the number of audits we were doing. So we won that prize as a team, which was really cool, which was a little cash prize for us to kind of go out as a team to celebrate. And it also kind of, that was really good at spurring the creativity. Competition is great for spurring creativity, but spurring creativity within like all of the teams at OakNorth, but our team in particular, to say like, how can we win the next prize, right? We came second in the next one. We still got a prize, so that's the main thing, right?
Now I want to know what was the first. So that I think, one of the hardest thing that we sometimes heard is when a new technology, a new innovation come along, people want to try it. People see that it's valuable and it's creating hours of time savings. But to actually embed it in everybody or your organization's day-to-day work, it does come with a lot of challenges. There are things you have to move, barriers you have to change ways of working. There's also, I think, challenges around, is this actually a scalable technology? Where are areas of this technology that I need to be particularly careful of related to AI? That is security, that is actually when you embed it into everyday life. Do people know what they're doing on there? So maybe you could share a little bit about some of that, I suppose, swing pain, as people in startups said.
Yeah, sure.
When you started to actually embed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the kind of challenge we saw early on was the kind of privacy challenge. Like once we solved that by having enterprise tools which we could upload our data to safely, like we then were like, okay, actually, there's a lot of talk about LLMs producing biased outputs, right? Or kind of incorrect outputs. Like what we worked out is that actually we were seeing a lot of that early on. So one of the things we worked out that we had to do was basically, instruct and configure the LLM, if you or the agent, if you don't know, just say you don't know, right? Don't kind of make anything up. And then actually just transferring stuff from the development into the production environment. Yeah. That's a challenge, right? And that's something we're still struggling with, right? Like productizing the agents that we've built. Like now we've effectively have a suite of agents that cover each part of our audit cycle. Like we've got them in a kind of library, within our kind of OakNorth GPT environment, and we're able to kind of all of us go in and use those. And effectively, then it's just the case of through my toll, we have toll gates at each stage of the audit process. Like, and it's just, I have to just ask, like, how are we using AI on this, right? Like, which tools did you use to generate this? Like, we're still being cautious. Like within our audit cycle, although we use lots of tooling and it makes us more efficient, we still have a human in the loop over everything. So everything's getting reviewed, reviewed and oversighted in the same way you would any other audit work paper. So for me, that gives us kind of, a level of assurance that the output is correct because, at least two people are looking at it and reviewing it. So but I would say, how do we move from kind of startup to scale up? Like we're still solving that. Like I still think one of our biggest challenges, because we don't follow a traditional software development lifecycle approach, and maybe that's one of the problems with kind of agent development by kind of end users is like actually moving from production into live is hard, right? Like how do you know when to stop? When do you stop tweaking your agent? Yeah. Right? Like we tweak it all the time. Yeah. But we have a human in the loop which kind of assures that the output is correct.
Yeah. You spoke about that actually earlier. You talked about how a new update is released and now suddenly changes happens that you need to now
so I was talking to Henry earlier, and I kind of gave the example of kind of GPT's migrating all of its agents to 5.0 from whatever model you created the agents on before. And that, and that can create kind of problems, right? Because you're effectively migrating from one model to another. And actually, I kind of did a note for the rest of the kind of, user group of agents across the business to say, hey, like when it migrates or when you migrate this, you need to follow some kind of basic testing steps. Like you need to do some outcome testing to make sure that the boundaries that you set this up to operate within still kind of the output is still within those boundaries. And we gave some example of how you can do that, right? Like standardized prompts that you kind of had set up at the beginning, retest those, right? See that you still get the right output, kind of compare some previous data sets that you used where you know what the output was. Like so just basic kind of regular outcomes testing of the model is really important. And whenever you have a change like that, OpenAI would are pushing that change through for all their agents, right? So actually, unless you kind of take note of what they tell
What's
you,
happening
you might not even know that, right? So one day your agent could be working on 4.0, and the next day it's working on 5.0, and your output's different, and if you're completely reliant on that, you might not even spot that.
Yeah.
So I think there's challenges in kind of, I guess I would say, like productizing that thing when you're when you're building it yourself as an audit function, and that creates risk. So
yeah, that's right. I think overall, right, like AI is unlocked a lot of value. There's still challenges, but I think that's certainly not the reason why people should not try it, because I suppose it's unlocked a lot of value. I think I don't know, what's the sort of value you're seeing today from that? How does it change from before when you were when you were working without it?
Like, this is going to sound wild, right? But like over 2024, like we have some productivity metrics which we measure, and those are cost per audit and kind of number of audits per auditor in the last 12 months. And then we also measure some other kind of things about coverage around the number of controls that we've tested and the number of audits that we've done, for example, right? Yeah. Like over the course of 2024, like I was really happy to sit there at the end of 24 and be able to say to my CEO, right, our cost per audit's gone down by 40%. Like our kind of number of audits per auditor has gone up by about, had almost doubled. So we'd gone up from like 2.9 to just over 4.
This is the number of audits.
This is the number of audits an auditor can do in 12 months, right? Yeah. Which 4 is a lot, right? If you look at a big tier 1 bank, I think they probably operate kind of around the 1 mark, right? Because there's complexity and there's a lot more people involved. We're simpler, so we should be able to do it faster. Yeah. But that kind of exponential increase is really powerful when you actually can show that. Yeah. In terms of controls coverage, I think we doubled the number of controls we covered from kind of around the 50 mark to kind of 98, 99. And in terms of audits, we increased from kind of 23, we did kind of 13 audits. 24, we did around 28.
Wow.
Like for me, that kind of proves the case. Now, obviously, like as a business, like we kind of talked about that and kind of said, well, this is and obviously this is a really good kind of test case for AI and the value AI can kind of bring. Like some of that change was AI for sure. Some of it was good old fashioned kind of continuous improvement in our processes and just doing things better. Yeah. Like, we also introduced Agile at that time, which, helped us kind of work in a better way. But also helped us organize, the use of AI better. So, I kind of argue they both go hand in hand, to be honest. So, but those are the kind of concrete results that I would say, like you're getting, better efficiency in terms of your cost. You're getting kind of more coverage. You're just getting much better quality of assurance, more coverage, at a kind of a reduced cost. So it's commercially, it's very easy to sell that. And as a result, we were able to kind of get more licenses. Like, we were able to kind of bring an intern in, a computer science intern in, who kind of enabled us to start working more with Claude and generating Python scripts, which we could then kind of take and automate some of the continuous control monitoring I talked about, like take those, those kind of data analytics tests that we do kind of in an audit and then kind of roll them forward to create quarterly control tests that can run in the background and create kind of automations that produce the report for us as well. Yeah. So like, you know,
That's a dream.
that was really powerful, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a virtuous circle, right? Like you get the efficiency, and then we're able to unlock more kind of investment around the tooling, which enable us to do more.
To do even greater things.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then I know you also spoke about it earlier, that how the success that you've seen utilizing these technologies now shared as knowledge to the wider team, wider organization within the company.
And because like we were able to do that successfully, we were then kind of asked to work with other parts of the business and kind of coach them around use cases. And to be honest, now they've far exceeded us. So like our CRO kind of keeps teasing me that like we're the Ask Jeeves of the technology world. Exactly. So he's like, we're yesterday now. So now we need to raise our game. But what I take some satisfaction from is that hopefully we were able to help kind of spur some other people to start experimenting and using it and seeing the benefits.
Yeah, I think many internal audit teams that are open or wanted to learn more about this technology at a stage where they're just starting is thinking practically. First, how do I build a business case? Yeah. Then how do I evaluate what technology is the right technology? And finally, what do I need to worry about when it actually comes to like change management, how the team works? I think any quick words of advice on people thinking about this?
Do you know what? Like I think in most organizations, someone somewhere will be thinking about how AI and automation with AI can kind of improve processes and efficiency in the organization. So tap into those people and kind of say like, I really want to try utilizing this, because that's what we did. That's what I did. And as a result, like, the first step was like being part of that hackathon, right? Yeah. And that connected me to all the other people that were interested in it. And then we set up a Slack group of kind of, people that are interested in AI.
Develop this momentum in the business.
And develop some momentum, get in with those people and kind of say, hey, we want to experiment. Like, do you have any spare licenses? Because you can guarantee someone somewhere will be experimenting with this stuff, right? So kind of just try to tap into that. Like I'm giving you the the low cost way of doing this because that's how kind of I work, and I run a small team. Like I'm very cost conscious. Like I as an organization, we're very cost conscious. So like we kind of have to hack things to get them to work. There's a real...
The technology is also catching up, because I suppose when you first started, there wasn't too many things for you to look elsewhere.
There wasn't much to do, right? And we experimented with a few things, like, as we were kind of as an organization getting used to things, we had a kind of, like a kind of aggregation tool, which kind of sat in between, the prompt and the LLM, kind of filtering the data and aggregating the results. But like we just found it was okay for prompting. It was a little bit slow, but it had no capability to build agents, which was the real kind of value for us. So that's that's kind of one of the things we learned early on. The other thing is kind of that privacy issue was a big thing. Right? We were not really able to unlock the value until we solved having enterprise level tooling, because until you can protect your data. And then I think it's just having a willingness to experiment, to be honest. And people will see that willingness in your organization. Right? Like people will see that you're willing to experiment and change things. And if you can set yourself some good measures which show, because I promise you, if you start automating your processes with AI, you'll be able to show efficiencies within 12 months. So if you have measures that enable you to do that, then kind of measure them now, measure them in 12 months, and you'll create your own business case, right?
Yeah, that's right. You tell a great story there. Yeah. For us, that's I think Matt displays this good example of, it's almost like entrepreneur, like seeing an opportunity, seeing a technology, build a use case, explore all obviously, there are challenges where you're DIYing solutions, but I think the end outcome is there. And for people who are maybe thinking, hesitating, trying to learn more, I think this would be great learnings for everybody to know.
And the other thing is, like, I still go back to the reason we started kind of experimenting, which was to understand the technology so that we can audit it. Because like in our next kind of plan, we'll start to encounter kind of agents in processes. Like if we hadn't created agents ourselves, like I don't know how we would ever have even audited that, right? Like there's not, there's some guidance, but there's not a huge amount of guidance around what to look for. But now I absolutely know how to go into the agent and look at the configuration and say, oh, hey, you haven't told your agent to kind of, if it doesn't know something, don't lie kind of thing. So therefore, some of the boundary things that you should put in, are not there. Or, hey, you're training your agent on data that's expired, right?
Of course, yeah.
Like, so
you can catch these things because you understand it now. Yeah.
Or I can kind of say, well, okay, how do you kind of perform regular outcome testing of the agent so that you don't get model drift, right? I can ask questions like that because I've had to deal with some of those problems.
You understood it well.
So I kind of think that's a really good kind of reason for doing it as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing the transition where internal audit teams are more and more focused on uncovering the technology part, the AI part of assurance. But it's like for areas that you are going to operating, you need to first be the expert in the area.
Yeah,
I can't think of
I just think if you've been through the journey of working with it, you kind of have a better understanding and maybe empathy with the business around some of the limitations. And maybe you just know the right questions to ask. So, and maybe it's that empathy piece as well. Like if people know that you've been working with the tools as well and you've all been in the boat together, actually they might be more open to kind of listening to what you have to say, right? Because it's grounded in experience. So that's always a good thing.
That's amazing. I think many people will find this incredibly valuable. And if I may just sort of ending our discussion with topics related to what do you think the future looks like? I think it's a hard question to answer because technology changes. Like you never know. And also people have very different opinions, even in Silicon Valley, right? Some believes this will change the world, will make human much better. Some believes this will completely ruin mankind. So it really, I'd love to learn a little bit more maybe around how you think this will help the internal audit team in the next 1, 2 years, 3 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
The reality is it's hard to think beyond 3 years.
Yeah.
Because the quality of the technology is and depth of the technology and capabilities is just exponentially improving, right? So I can what I can think about today might not even be relevant tomorrow, but course, anyway, I'll have a go. And like you said, there's that whole gamut of kind of people thinking super intelligence will emerge and we'll all be out of a job in 5 years. To kind of AI will enable kind of humans to work better together. And like I tend to be on the more optimistic side. So I think the future of organizations is kind of, humans enabled by AI. I kind of like to think of that as a more hopeful kind of vision. So I've done, like as a team, we've done some thinking around, kind of what do we want, what's the future look like and how do we kind of think we can utilize the technology. So like I think, the future auditor, like the future, we talked for a while in the profession about like what does a future auditor look like, right? And maybe 4 or 5 years ago we were talking about, hey, the future auditor is data savvy, tech enabled, like understands how to manipulate data and run analytics.
Data science, that was
exactly. That was the big thing, right?
Yeah.
And now I think the future auditor is kind of able to work with AI, understand the risks, understand the data sets. I think people still need to kind of have some level of understanding of the subject that they're kind of reviewing or auditing, because if they don't, they won't be able to challenge the output from a kind of an AI process. So I think that bit remains, but I think we will increasingly transform into kind of people offering assurance, over AI tools and AI agents embedded within processes, as we get to agentic kind of processes where we have orchestrations of multiple agents, like looking at how do we assure those, right? Maybe building kind of agents which assure the other agents, right? Which is kind of really exciting for me. Like I would love that, but I have no idea how to create that, but that's a kind of nice way to think about it. I'm pretty sure there's 100 different things I can't even imagine that we could do with it. So especially by two.
I love the prediction. Just to wrap up with a few final thoughts, would be great to hear the key takeaways you want to share with other internal auditors that are starting this journey.
Sure. I think the takeaway for any kind of audit function thinking about starting an AI journey is really like think of a couple of good use cases, like connect with the people that have the tooling, because I can guarantee that most organizations will be looking for opportunities to deploy AI and test use cases to try to look for those efficiencies, kind of connect with those people and then get access to those tools, kind of use them responsibly, obviously, but start to experiment and try to tie it into your audit process and look for pain points and areas where you're doing, anywhere where you're doing multiple kind of references between multiple documents, that's just right for automation. Do the simple things first, because like that will help you do the more complicated things later.
That's amazing. And if anyone, I suppose, have any questions or wanted to discuss about this topic,
feel free to reach out. Happy to share our journey. But, we've definitely not solved all the problems, but it's kind of really exciting.
We're
it's
all
a really
part of the
exciting
journey
time,
now.
Yeah.
So that's great. And thanks so much, Matt, for joining us today.
Thanks,
and I'm sure that what you've shared with me today is incredibly useful for many other listeners, internal auditors
awesome.
that have tuned in. So thank you.
Thanks.